So thanks very much for joining us. The ARC360 Webinar, second one of 2021, and this one with a specific theme around the human side of business. So talking about people and coming at it from many different directions. So as always, a huge thank you to our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emacs, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, as well as our partners, Aztec, the Green Part Specialists in DASA, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. And of course, our disclaimer before we go too far, the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. Please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. So the human side of business, and today, great lineup. We have Gary Fay, the CEO of indentifi Global. We have Steve Thompson, who's board vice chairman of AutoRaise and managing director of Industry Insights. And we have Howard Wolstencroft, managing director of Samson, Bolton Limited. So let's come across and see how everyone's doing. Hi guys, thanks very much for joining us. We've obviously been off air and just having a little catch up, but Howard, I'm going to come across to you first. So just a little bit of an introduction in terms of yourself, Samson, and if you like, it's your sort of status in the industry.
Yeah, managing director, owner of the Samson Bolton Limited. Been here 15 years or so, 2005. Before that, I've had 33 years in the motor industry, doing various things, running dealerships, used cars, after sales managers, but obviously last 15 years I've been stuck into body shops. Yeah.
Great stuff, and a nice setup you have there too, and we'll come on to that, I'm sure, and a nice diverse business, I think it's fair to say, so we'll touch on that soon. Howard, Gary, if I can come across to you, a little introduction from yourself.
Hi Mark. indentifi Global. Some of you may be more familiar with indentifi Body Repair, at least I hope you are. But we're essentially three recruitment companies, one being indentifi Global, which is much more about IT, business change and transformation, cybersecurity. Then we have an indentifi Office Professionals, which is a kind of back office, finance and accounting and marketing, those kind of things. But probably more notable for this conversation is indentifi Body Repair, where we believe that we've captured the UK technician market, and that's captured them in a database which is kind of constantly communicated with and updated, and we think we've pretty much now got access to, I would suggest, kind of good 75% of the UK body repair technician market, and then the associated people outside of that. So we've got a good sense of what's going on with people, of course.
Great stuff, Gary. Thanks very much, and we'll come on in more depth to talk to you shortly. And Steve, hi Steve, how you doing?
All good, thanks, Mark.
Good. The shirt behind you've got to get mentioned because they're going quite well at the moment.
Yes, we will see how the next couple of months go, but yeah, really pleased. I suppose that's a good starting point actually for my introduction, Mark. So aside from being an avid Leicester City fan, Industry Insights is my business. Been running that now for 5 years. We're motor claims consultants with anyone really that's interested in motor claims, whether that be supply chain, insurers, fleets, anyone that's got an interest in that whole piece. We work, I guess, in two ways. We work as consultants to those businesses in any form that we can add some value. And that kind of led to us creating a unique concept of connected solutions where we bring together the industry supply chains from F&O all the way through to salvage and car care. And we work with those suppliers that are exclusive in each part of that chain with insurers primarily to deliver them either an end-to-end or a modular motor claim solution. And I also heavily involved with AutoRaise, being a trustee for AutoRaise for a few years now, and I'm vice chairman of AutoRaise, and more recently become even more involved. I guess hence my involvement in this afternoon.
Great stuff. Thanks, Steve. And good to see you're still finding some spare time to do as much as you possibly can. So right, let's have a little jump across. So I'm just going to jump to sharing the screen again. And just want to pop across, have a little look at the data that's stemming out of recent times. So just a little recap, this is the CAPS Claims Analysis Report, and this is up to the end of December. You can see the entire journey, if you like, through 2020 and where we got to end of December. The most recent report out earlier this week, which is now a weekly analysis. So weekend in 23rd of January, i.e. last week, and you can see the figures there. So unique claims, 77%, and transmissions, so supply chain transmissions, 84%. And that's off a new, if you like, baseline of the 7th of November. Again, any more details, if you want the full report, drop myself or Kev Thompson at CAPS a line, and I'm sure we can get you that to you. Apple Mobility Trends Report, again, just skipping across these very, very quickly. Driving still down 34% across the UK. Snapshots these are. This is the Google COVID Community Mobility Report, Greater London. We've caught this 2 weeks ago in the first webinar back, and these figures have not changed a great deal, up and down a couple of percentage points. Likewise, Greater Manchester. And then we've got the TomTom live traffic, chosen Bristol this week, just as an example. Quite interesting. You can see some huge sort of rush hour peaks, or what were there, average congestion in 2019. You can see obviously the 2020, and then the red line represents the current situation. So far less peaks in there. Birmingham, same thing, interesting. Sunday, Monday, huge peaks there. Don't know what was happening there. But again, you can see certainly a leveling off, although slightly increased, if you like, or prominent rush hours still seemingly in Birmingham. So let's jump back. And what we'll do is we will just run a couple of quick polls to get ourselves started. So again, all polls anonymous, so cast your vote, nothing to sort of hide from, no right or wrong answers. So the first one, what level of claims repair volumes are you currently operating at? And you've got 100% plus, 80 to 100%, 60 to 80, 40 to 60, 20 to 40, or 0 to 20%. Just gives us a little snapshot of what's happening in the industry. As I said, all anonymous. We can't identify anyone from the votes, but it gives us a little opportunity just to catch up on where the industry's at. We'll give that another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll explore a little bit about the changes over the last couple of weeks as well. So it's settling, and all right, there we go. So let's share those results. So as sort of tied in, I suppose, with the CAPS data, 60 to 80% seems to be where it's at. 40 to 60% again is, if you like, the second highest figure there, so 35%, and then a few either side of that. Let's then skip to the changes in volumes. So again, this one, have you experienced change in claims volumes during the past few weeks? This one we've running on the bi-weekly on the webinars. Again, just gives us a little snapshot, temperature gauge, if you like, of where things are at. Certainly conversations I've had, claims seem to have dropped off the last couple of weeks as lockdown 3 kicks in, but we'll give it another 15 seconds or so there. Again, no right or wrong answers. Is what it is. Okay, and there's the results from that one. So slight decrease, 44%, significant decrease, 33%, remain static, 17, and then 3% and 3% respectively above that. Super. Right, let's then jump across. So Steve, I'm going to come to you first, if I may, and just kind of, still touching on that point. We'll move on to the people bit in a second, but you look at the industry through different lenses, if you like. How's it shaping up right now from your perspective?
I think it's very commensurate with the numbers you've displayed there, actually, Mark. we're a long way from normal, certainly trading in our own business and the collective of our connected solutions partners. I would say we're around 70%. So it's not what it was, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was during lockdown 1, which again, I guess fairly reflective of your numbers there. And I think I was thinking about this only a couple of days ago, that if you compare things now with lockdown 1, I think most businesses would feel the same. We are more positive perhaps than we were in the dark days of April and May as businesses, but maybe not so positive as people, because the fatigue of lockdown is dragging lots of people down, for all the reasons that everyone talks about. You know, you're not able to go out, you're not able to interact with friends, you're not able to do the things you want to do. So I think it's a tale of two halves, really. Would be my view as where business and life's at the minute.
Yeah, some great observations, as you say. I think I suppose business-wise, lockdown 1, it was that huge sort of shock to the system, and we didn't know where we were going. We're certainly seeing green shoots in terms of vaccine now, and as you say, more positive sort of approach to lockdown 3, if you like, and we can start to see things happening. So, and Howard, from your perspective, again, sort of representing from the repairer's view, that vantage point there, how are things with you at the moment?
Yeah, exactly like Steve just said, and your first graphs that you showed, where you went through January, February, March, and it took a beat, it shot right down. And then we climbed gradually back up towards October. October, we thought we were okay. And then you got into lockdown 3, and it was really tough. And then going into Christmas time, coming into New Year. But the last couple of polls that you've just done, if people say things have changed since year end and the tail end of December, things have definitely increased from the last 2 or 3 weeks of December, because there was hardly any claims at all, because it was a total lockdown and nobody was going anywhere. So on our side of things, January has kicked up a bit, but not nearly as much as you would want it to be, like the graphs of 19, 20 and 21 that you just showed from Google and Apple, where it showed traffic. It's very similar to that. At rush hour, you're not getting as many claims as possible. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. And a little bit more about your business, Howard, because I sort of alluded to the fact that it's a very diversified business that you've got there. So just tell us a little bit more about sort of the mix of work that you have within the shop there.
Yeah, well, I came here in 2005 from dealership backgrounds, really, after sales. And when you're at a dealership background, you normally get all your after sales to cover your overheads, and hopefully your new car sales, used car sales, your fleet's going to be your cream on your cake, etc., etc. And when I came here as a body shop, obviously it's a fair size for a single site, 20,000 square foot with 40 employees. So when you start looking at the logistics of making profit from just the body centre, and then we had the big recession of 06, 07, 08, and that really smartened us up, where some insurers took the work away. So you've got to diversify, but we've got a lot. You could have 250 cars going out of your body shop per month, and they're all driving away, and they've all got 4 or 5 tyres on every vehicle. They might want a service, they might want an MOT. So the main thing we did set up 8 or 9 years ago was an MOT centre. Basically on the back, we were selling that many MOTs to customers coming in. We were subcontracting them round the corner, and only just put in a couple of quid on to cover it, and we were doing the repairs. So we opened our own MOT centre. So really, at the minute, through Christmas and New Year, the mechanical side has grown and grown and grown, and we've been picking up some private people, we've been picking up bodywork from the mechanical side, where we're not just expecting the insurers and work providers to just, give us a handout and say, here's a load of claims, sort them out, as such, on the blunt side of things.
Great stuff. Thanks, Howard. Good little explanation there and insight into where you're coming from. And Gary, I come across to you. Obviously, you kind of come at things from a different angle. The world of recruitment, how is that kind of, shaping up? We touched upon some bits earlier on when we were just chatting, and people have remained a core theme throughout all of this. 2020, it became increasingly evident. People and technology were the key themes, but explain a little bit more as well about your kind of involvement, I suppose, in the sector at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose we see two sides of the coin. We get a sense of what the candidates are feeling, which is interesting. And for some time during 2020, we were talking to candidates, but there was very little movement and opportunity. But we were talking to them about actually how they're feeling, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it later. Just the mental health and the mental exhaustion of being furloughed for too long, and actually even still people being back in furlough, and there's still many people still in furlough. And yet when we kind of came out of that first lockdown, Steve and I were talking earlier, whether 3 lockdowns, but I suppose the first hard lockdown, body repair, interestingly, across all of our businesses, was the one that was most confident and really came back with a spring in its step. And in fact, kind of late summer, it really had a bit of momentum, which was really encouraging. It's this current lockdown we're in seems to have taken the steam out of that a little bit. And I think there's kind of confidence a little bit is ebbing away because we need to get to the end of this current lockdown. But opportunity at the minute falls into 2 camps. There's certainly companies I would probably put in the category of groups that are starting to execute their strategies for 21 and 22, and they're quite buoyant in the market. They're definitely hiring. Takes a few minutes to look across LinkedIn and see these fabulous new body shops that are opening up around the country, and there's lots of them, which is actually really encouraging, I think. But then conversely, there's maybe smaller independents that clearly are struggling and actually really worried about growth and scaling at the minute. So if anything, they're kind of standing still. I suspect that's almost regression a little bit at the moment, because they're probably losing market share to people that have been a bit more aggressive. But there is a tale of 2 camps. That there is confidence in pockets, and there's definitely movement. I just think there's a reticence of candidates at the minute that I think they've probably decided they're going to leave their current employer, but they're not ready to do it quite yet, because actually, do you know what? It's safe harbor at the minute. There's kind of money being paid and salary being paid, be it by furlough or not. But interestingly, I think the disengagement has already happened. And I think that will kind of wash through in the next few months. But I'm sure it's something we're going to talk about later. But there is an opportunity to re-engage those people, by the way. But I think there's recruitment already died into the system and bedded into the system. It's just a matter of when those people decide to actually leave their current roles.
Interesting stuff. And you mentioned earlier about a kind of, a regional sort of differences. So, from south, work your way north of the country. Explain a little bit about what you're sort of experiencing there, because it's something I've heard from various repairers. It's
contentious, Mark, what we regard as north and south. But for the sake of this conversation, I would say that we saw and have seen, in fact, and not just in our body repair business, but actually across our 3 businesses, much more confidence, activity, kind of movement of people and jobs and opportunity in the north. And I would kind of put that from Northampton up, really. Definitely lots of movement and opportunity in the northwest, maybe not so much in the northeast. London certainly closed down hard, and it was a real hard close. And in fact, London definitely hasn't come back on stream yet by any means. It's still a closed shop as far as we're seeing. And even the southeast, which typically has been a busy area and lots of opportunity, that's kind of been slow to come back as well. So there is a north-south divide, but I would say Midlands-south divide. It's Midlands and up seems to be a bit more buoyed and a little bit more progressive in terms of getting on with stuff, really.
Great stuff. Thanks, Gary. Great insight there. Steve, I'll come across to you. So, we talk about, obviously, if you can give us a bit more of an insight into kind of AutoRaise and specifically what's happening there at the moment, because there's been various changes, obviously, within the media or within the press. How is the human element of business? How has it been impacted by the pandemic, positively or negatively, now and into the future? What's kind of, I suppose, the impact on AutoRaise been as well?
there's a bit to go out there, Mark, but I think the human impact is being really hard, actually, and I think it would be hard to argue different, and I think that's kind of, it doesn't matter what age group you're in. It's been tough for varying reasons. And as I said earlier, I think the longer it's gone on, the tougher it's become. But specifically speaking about the age group that I guess from an AutoRaise perspective, I'm most interested in, and the fellow trustees are most interested in, is that kind of school leaver age group. And just kind of teenagers that are of the mindset that they don't know what they're going to do moving forward. I think we just have to, for a minute, have a think about how tough life is for that age group. It's impacted us all, I get that. But if I look back at my teenage years, at that age group, perhaps I shouldn't have been, but I certainly was, in pubs and nightclubs and various other things that, we all enjoyed doing. And we had lots of friends and social life was great. Well, these people, this age group, they haven't had that. And I think, that's a real shame. I think they're missing out massively on education as well, because you can homeschool all you like, but there's a lot of stuff you miss as a result of that, as we miss in business. We talk about in business, you don't get the coffee machine conversations and all that type of stuff. Well, can you imagine what the teenagers are missing out on? I honestly think it's dreadful for that age group. And then if you add to that they're looking at their future career and, trying to get a career off the ground anytime's not easy, because we've all been there. But trying to get a career off the ground in a pandemic and in a recession, because we're in a recession, whichever way you look at it, we're in a recession. It's pretty bleak for them. And what we're trying to do is support that age group as best we can, and create opportunities for that age group within our sector, specifically the body repair sector. And that's something that, without any shadow of a doubt, requires everyone from this industry to play a part in. No matter what you do in the industry, you have to play a part. I make no apologies for being so blunt about it, because that's the reality of it. It is not just the responsibility of repairers. It's not just the responsibility of, I don't like the term, but work providers, customers, insurers. It's not their responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility to do what we can to promote the positives of the repair industry, of which there are plenty, and do our best to give this age group a future. And I'm not just talking males, female, whatever ethnicity you are. I always struggle with that, despite the fact I live in Leicester. And that's what we should be doing. I really would like people to get behind what we're doing. You'll note there's a increased presence on social media at the moment as we run up to National Apprentice Week. We are really looking for support in that area, because we think it's needed more than ever. No doubt you'll ask me some questions later on, Mark, because I get the challenges around creating opportunities for apprentices at this time for repairers, because of the reduction in volume and the pressure on everyone's P&L accounts. But it's certainly something we need to be looking at. And without repairers being interested, there is nowhere for these apprentices to go. So in a sense, dare I say it, as vice chair of AutoRaise, it actually is academic existing if we can't place apprentices anywhere. We can create the interest, but if there's nowhere for them to go and learn and build their career, it is academic. It's pointless.
Great message, Steve. Great message to the industry. And yeah, absolutely take that all on board. Some nice messages coming in the chat as well there. Howard, you know, from sort of, you know, a body shop, a repairer level as you are, tell us a little bit about your sort of day-to-day challenges, apprentices, but also staff at the moment. How are you kind of juggling this whole, you know, furlough piece, and just what's going on really, you know, in people's heads, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if we start with apprentices, like Steve has said, if you don't take your apprentices on, then it's a vicious circle, because there won't be any apprentices. And then when you are looking for key staff, you're going to end up paying a lot of money to try and poach them from your colleague. And, you know, you're going to end up hiking that labour rate, and the labour rate's not strong enough to support that either. So, you know, you do need to take your apprentices on. We were having a chat earlier about apprentices and can you afford them? And then we had the chat, can you afford not to have them? Because you look at your £4 or £4.15 an hour that your new apprentice would get, which is your 166 a week. You divide that by your charge out rate. As long as your apprentice with his mentor saves them an hour a day by fetching parts, bringing a vehicle in, moving the scrap, moving the cardboard, sorting everything else out, then he's actually covered his own money, and you might actually get more productivity out of your productive, and your productive might be more happy about it having a young guy with him who's learning the ropes. But when you talk about looking after your staff with what's happened in the last year, because we are getting towards a year, it was the end of March when all this started, and we're in 10 months now. I've got a parts supervisor I haven't seen for 10 months because of his health condition. He's been working from home remotely, and you know, he's quite happy when some of the estimators Zoom call him so he can have a laugh and a giggle, have a bit of the banter, like the guy said, have that coffee cup discussion over the Zoom. So he quite enjoys that. And even some of the girls in the office who've been homeschooling, looking after kids, and a couple of them with little kids, have said, I do hope nursery's not shut next week. I can't wait to come back to work. I've had enough. So on that side of things, you have a little bit of a giggle about it. But sometimes you get a bit like a psychiatrist. You know, there's that many different things going on, you know, where you don't know what's happening in everybody's home life. And then there's all this going on at work, and then everyone's frightened of social distancing and, you know, the areas where you can't go at work where there's other people. But for the team wise, it's trying to get that atmosphere back and the camaraderie of your colleagues, and really just getting things going again and getting things back into normality. People have been missing work if they've been off. I mean, we've got everybody back, bar maybe 8 or 10% of people. Which might change in the next couple of weeks, but we have been looking at some key staff who were different to people who were off on furlough. So we are still taking people on. And apprentice side of things, we started with 5, and I think we've got 1 left, but he's an absolute class act, which is great. And we've had a close relationship with the local college, Bolton College, where so they sometimes send them in for work experience and see how they go, let them do 2 weeks, they get an accreditation for doing 2 weeks, and we see what they're like and they can see what we're like. So we do that, but I've never worked as hard this last year, to be honest with you.
Well, it sounds all very positive, Howard. So, you know, fair play to you. And it's, you know, it's certainly not an easy act. And we've heard it week in, week out on these webinars that, you know, having that whole juggling act, it's a whole new dimension to everybody's day-to-day business. So, you know, hats off to you for juggling that. Gary, I want to come on to you because you've got some kind of interesting insights and thoughts about the current sort of talent pool within the industry. Why are people, you know, moving? Is there this huge sort of talent pool available out there at the moment in light of what happened late last year with kind of, you know, the nationwide acquisition and things like this? We heard of a lot of job losses. What's kind of going on really from that point of view?
Do you know what, Mark? I think, and if we talk about the talent pool of the body repair sector in particular and specifically, it's I reminded Steve earlier today about a quote that I kind of carry around with me, but it was I think it was Night of Nights, wasn't it, Steve, that you did a speech, and Steve was kind of rallying this particular cause back in 2018 and talking about a decreasing talent pool in the body repair market. We have an ever increasing age of our techs, which is currently on average about 48, 49 years old. We've really not addressed bringing new talent into the sector. So actually the talent pool is getting smaller, undoubtedly. And I mean that undoubtedly. The talent pool is getting much smaller, and yet the industry needs more techs. We've got the compounded effect of Brexit, and whatever your views of Brexit are, the simple fact is the movement of people across borders will impact this country for technicians. And we've all had Polish guys and Romanian guys, and they're excellent at their job and really good at their job, but they're stopping coming into the UK, or in fact they've left the UK. So that talent pool is increasingly getting smaller, and yet everybody wants to hire somebody. Now that's the kind of backdrop of that. And Steve was right to flag this 2 years ago, but I would suggest actually in the last 2 years we haven't really done much to kind of address the problem. So actually we're 2 years further into the issue in my opinion. Steve, I think you'd said by 2030, we could literally fall off a cliff in terms of being able to cover the work opportunities. I think we've all agreed that 2030 was a bit kind of pushed out. It's probably sooner than that. And by the way,
ever the optimist. Gary, but I tend to agree.
It's 8 years away, Steve, isn't it? And if we brought on an apprentice today, for an apprentice to really be usable in your business, that's kind of 2 years away from today. So now that's 6 years away. So actually bringing new talent in is, Steve, you're absolutely right, for the great good of what we need to do for young talent and young people in this industry and in this country. But actually, it's a necessity, because if you don't hire and actually build your own today, your business is going to run out of people. And to that point, that the knock-on effect of that is, right now, as I kind of mentioned, candidates, technicians, your staff have already decided whether they're staying with you or they're going. Now, whether or not they've handed their notice in at this point, they've decided. Now, right now, they're probably not going to leave because, you know what, it's just not safe to do that, or furlough's paying a salary, but they've kind of disengaged. And there'll be a whole host of things that have happened there that, maybe is not in your control, but communication, the mental health of actually not working, actually the purpose, having a purpose and having a reason to work. These are all kind of coming into play. And I suspect over the course of 21, we'll kind of incrementally see people leaving, and you'll be surprised. And you say, I didn't see it. I say, well, actually, I decided back in January, I decided in December. So that effort that we need to put into our people now is just so important, because in truth, you can strategize and scale and grow all you want in your mind. If you've not got the people to do it, it don't make sense. And that's kind of why people at the moment is such an important component part of our businesses. And actually the management and the leadership around our people is just, for as far as I'm concerned, kind of where it's at. And it's such an alarm bell. Steve, you're right to ring that alarm bell 2 years ago. For me, it's even more noisy today. It's a real problem that needs addressing.
Thanks, Gary. Sorry, Mark. Can I sort of interject? I don't want to take over your job, by the way, but Gary, honestly, spot on point. I couldn't agree more with it, but I would expand it wider, because if without repeating your point, we've got a scenario where there is absolutely a skills shortage. I sort of call it a skills vacuum in a sense. And that's been exacerbated by COVID, because I know many people in body shops that are of a certain age who are looking to do something different or retire, because they've kind of had enough. And I get that, they've been doing this job a long time. And because of COVID, we have not invested in young talent. And as you rightly say, since the speech I did 2.5 years ago, not a lot has changed, sadly. we've not been supporting those young people coming into the business. So it has created a vacuum, which is by default. No one's wanted to create this. And that's a real problem for everyone beyond body repairers, because if insurance companies cannot fulfill their policyholders' needs to have their vehicles repaired, then they've got a problem. And that is why a number of insurers do support AutoRaise, and we're eternally grateful for that. But there are a lot that don't, and I would like them to, and sooner rather than later, because there is that vacuum, and we won't be able to fulfil their legal requirement to fulfil an insurance claim. You also won't have the associated elements of a vehicle repair, parts for one, paint another, and the list goes on. You know, I could talk about this until Leicester City win the Premier League, however long that may be. But seriously, that's what we're faced with as an industry, and that is what we've got to tackle. I touched on this earlier about, I get that it's difficult to invest in an apprentice, totally get that. I run a business myself. I know how difficult it is. But what I would say is, just in the same way as a body shop will invest their capital into buying a new welder or a new jig or new ADAS equipment, that is an investment that they are making for the long term. They're not going to get the money back on that in the next 12 months. They're not going to get it back in the next 24 months. They're not going to get it back in the next 3 years. It's something that they'll probably get the money back over the next 5 to 10 years. It'll be amortized over that period. We need to look at apprentices in the same way. They are an investment. However, as Albert's point said below, you can actually, if you use them wisely and professionally, you can actually extract value as you go. And that's a point I'd really like to make.
Steve, just on that point, if you build out that ecosystem of hiring an apprentice, and Mark, if you consider it, it's talking about cost. It's a buyer's market. In fact, it's a candidate-driven market. So salaries are going to increase of the techs that are available. That's a fact, because essentially less techs, higher salaries. So there is a cost implication to actually hiring, a cost benefit to hiring an apprentice. But the ecosystem of actually bringing that young person on board is firstly more structure to your own business, but more purpose to your business, training programs, mentoring programs, coaching programs, promotional opportunities for your existing staff. You build your own people, so culturally you get the people right, and actually they stay for the long term. The add-on benefits are incredible. And as we're getting to, if we rolled forward another 3 years, and actually the only people in the market are those that are available, and that's your only choice to make a hire, fundamentally it's a desperation hire, and it's not a choice hire. And that's kind of where the market's moving towards, and that's why we as a company invest huge amounts of time in the cultural aspect of the candidate, and we talk about their preferences and their aspirations and their work-life balance aspirations. If you align that, you kind of get people staying with you for long term. And whilst we've got enough candidates to play with, we can have that luxury, but that luxury is going to kind of dissipate a little bit as we actually play around with less candidates.
Absolutely. Right, guys, we're going to have to just move the conversation. Great points being made all the way through this. Some good comments coming in as well, people supporting that. Angela Henry saying about the fact that we have a little bit more time, and observation of apprentices is a key thing going forward. Just want to do launch another poll. So just have a little look. How would you rate your current focus on the human side of business? 1 being low, 5 being high. And then following on from that, what is the main focus? And you've got a selection of multiple choice there. So managing flexi furlough, managing absence, i.e. isolation requirements, annual leave, productivity, is that a challenge at the moment? And well-being, i.e. mental health, team cultures, is that something that's a real focus? Skill sets, upskilling, role changes, and then of course apprentices there as well. So no particular order, but just have a little review of that as we go. And again, I'm very conscious in terms of time-wise. What we'll do, we'll leave that poll running, and I'll come back to you, Howard, if I may. So how do you kind of keep on top of the people side of your business at the moment? How are you kind of managing it, if you like?
Well, I mean, obviously, we split in certain disciplines, whether it's office, whether it's panel, or strip and fit, or painters, preppers, mechanical. And then obviously you've got the other segment as well. I mean, you've got to keep on top as regards, you've mentioned well-being, and that is one of the strongest ones for this last 10 months, is making sure people need to be happy to sort of come to work, or as happy as you can be coming to work, and you've got to make sure you get a culture in the place and the environment. They've got to have the tools to do the job, and make sure it's a decent place to work. During COVID, we've had quite a lot of CVs been sent to us for people who want to join us, which has been really nice. And, you know, we are taking a couple on, but because you don't want to turn down the key players in the industry, but it's nice that they want to come. But exactly like I think Gary was saying before, there's people out there that are thinking, I'm safe where I am, but I really don't want to be here. And that's going to affect the productivity as well. So on the side of things, it's just speaking to them and making sure the supervisors or the managers on site are looking after their own little bit of the team, and they're all right as well. You know, I mean, your manager might need a fair bit of looking after as well, even though he's looking after other people. So it can be difficult, but if you've got a good team and they're all looking after each other and the social distancing, and they weren't social distancing in the brew room, so we took one of the doors off. That seemed to help. But, yeah,
Great stuff, Howard. And then, of course, you know, looking out for yourself as well is one of the keys amongst all of this. So, you've got to do that. Just going to share the results from the poll. So, how would you rate your current focus on the human side of business? 1 being low, 5 being high. You can see that the majority, 37%, high focus at the moment, 34% as well. Ticking in at 4. What is the main focus? Multiple choice there. So what have we got? Wellbeing and mental health. So great one, 46% there. 37% coming in the managing flexi furlough. As we said, that's kind of a day-to-day challenge, a completely new challenge for all of us. Team culture, that's something that's cropped up on previous webinars as being, you know, of utmost importance. You get that bit right, you're kind of halfway there, and it probably links back to what Gary's saying in terms of some people have probably already made up their mind about their next move potentially, but are just sat tight at the moment. So, and apprentices, Steve, coming in there 18%. So, Gary, on that point, and kind of, you know, moving things on, I suppose, a little bit, simple tips, or, you know, how do you kind of advise people keep on top of things? Is it what Howard said? Is there anything special, unique from the recruitment side of the world that you kind of think is a real key element of all of this at the moment?
I'm not convinced there's a silver bullet for it, Mark, at the minute. I think it's high levels of communication. I think it's high levels of engagement. I think it's generally asking open questions to actually check how people are. And you know, as we know, people are not necessarily always going to kind of be honest about mental health or their current circumstances, but there's nothing wrong with asking again and again and keep on asking. I think as leaders, and there's lots of leaders I know on the call, that, you know, we have a responsibility to manage our managers. And just because you've said it, you can't rely on the very fact that it's actually happened on the shop floor. And I think there's a real importance that we sense check actually that our managers are doing exactly the things that we should be doing in terms of high levels of communication and engagement and genuine questions and you know and listen to the answers. And if you're kind of getting a trend of answers that kind of fundamentally doesn't align with what you think is going on, address that issue. You know, and that for me is the answer. I don't think there is a magic answer, and I don't think there's a kind of solution that fits all. But for me, it's just high levels of communication and engagement with your staff, and asking questions other than about their work. Because as we've mentioned, there's a whole load of things going on in their life, you know, work life, kids at home. And Steve was talking earlier about kind of, you know, all our own kids and finding a quiet moment in the house to even have a webinar. But, you know, these are stressful times. You know, money's tight, situations are tight. So not everything has to be about work. I think a caring, company or a caring boss at the minute is worth its weight in gold. I'm sure everyone's doing it, by the way. I don't think it's not happening. But if you're not doing it, really, you're going to be licking your wounds further in the year when those people leave you, and they will, because they'll remember. But even those that are disengaged today, I think you can re-engage them, but you've got to make a considered effort to re-engage them. And if you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, well, if they leave, they leave. As we've mentioned, that there isn't many choices out there to actually replace staff with. So if you've got a good member of staff, invest your time in them.
Great stuff. Thanks, Gary. And Steve, I'm again very conscious on time here. I know you're raring to get chatting, but just again from a sort of to round things off, if you like, apprentices. You've given your kind of rallying cry and your impassioned call, and I think all of us on this call, come at it from the same angle as yourself. What do people need to do? Do I sit down and do I map this out? Do I just make contact? Do I just make the first moves and see what happens? Where do you go from here? And that be either supporters of AutoRaise, potential supporters, people who are looking to take on apprentices, people who are really unsure about it all. Where do I go, Steve, to start?
I think it depends where you are, what part of the industry you're in. So if you are a business that's got the potential to fund and support AutoRaise, then I'd welcome contact from those people. Obviously, I'd be gratefully received. If you are a repairer and you aren't currently an affiliated repairer to AutoRaise, but you would like to be, again, get in touch with myself or Bob. Bob's still around until May and possibly beyond that as well. So I would encourage that. You, as a repairer, you may completely understandably have concerns about taking on an apprentice, whether they be financial, cultural, distraction, whatever they may be. Speak to us, speak to me, speak to any of the trustees. I won't go through them all here, but we've got a number of trustees and associate trustees. Gary's actually an associate trustee. People such as Chris Weeks. If you go on the website, you'll see. Speak to us, and we will help you get your head around the apprentice maze, if you like. I thought what Howard said earlier on about the economics of taking on an apprentice was absolutely brilliant. I'd never specifically heard his calculation before myself, so that's a great one. Speak to us and we will help you get over those hurdles. And then if you are in any way connected to young people, then what I would sincerely ask is promote our industry. It is not Mitchell's Autos from EastEnders. It isn't. It's not the garage Kev Webster's under the arches in Coronation Street. That is not our industry. It's far from our industry. Yet that is the perception, whether we like it or not. Use your love of our industry and your passion for our industry to spread the positive message of what we do. Something I was going to mention earlier actually was, in terms of an industry to go and work in, what a great future. And the fact that the advent of the electric vehicle and how that's taking off at the moment really should give people confidence that this is a sustainable business to work in. Because even with electrification, the motor vehicle will continue. We will always want mobility, and people will always find a way to power a motor vehicle. So this is an industry for forever. And if you liken that, I don't know, when I was younger, people going and getting a job at Blockbuster Video. Well, where are they now? This industry is not a video shop. This industry has got a great future with great people. So it's our job to talk that up really and get people engaged in it. But as I said earlier, unless we have body shops, repairers that are willing to take on apprentices, it is sadly academic.
Great stuff, Steve. I'm going to have to draw a close to things there. I know we could talk about this for forevermore, and let's look at another webinar very close in the near future in terms of that. Everybody who's joined us, thank you so much. Appreciate the time that you've spent. Drop a message in the chat there. Let us know your thoughts on today's session. A big thank you, as always, of course, to our corporate partners, who are BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, as well as, of course, our partners, Aztec, the Green Part Specialists, Indasa, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. A huge thank you, of course, to Howard, Gary, and Steve for your time today. As I said, I'm sure we could debate this forever and a day, and we will set up a time to follow up on this. Great contributions from people in the chat. A few questions have come through. Hopefully we've covered those off, but if not, we'll pick them up, we'll take them away with us, and we'll certainly come back to you with
Mark, I've got one last thing. You'll love this.
Oh, stop it, Steve. Go on.
You'll love this. Seeing as we're talking about the human side of business, and I'm conscious that it's probably been biased in the favour of apprentices, but something that I'm really passionate about, and I talk to the people I work with on a regular basis, and I speak to my children about, and that is, I think morally, we all have an obligation during this time to do well by people. And, you know, it's not about even being an employer, it's about being a human being. It's about having some humanity about the way you are. And what I say is this, is do one positive thing for someone every single day, no matter what. Every single day, do one positive thing for someone, whoever that may be in your world, do it. And when you speak to someone, make sure that, or do your very best, that when they finish speaking with you, they feel better than before they spoke to you. And on that note, I will stop talking, Mark.
Stop it. You've nearly taken up the whole hour. Steve, thank you very much. Nice way to sign off. And he's absolutely right. Hey, if we all did that, what a better place the world would be.
It's easy to do. It's honestly, it's very easy to do.
Well, I gave Leicester City a mention right at the outset of the webinar, so I've brightened up your day because they don't get many mentions. So
no, they don't.
Great stuff, guys. Thank
the
you.
Invisibles. See you later.
See you guys. Bye-bye. Cheers.
See you all soon.